This is in Irvine, Texas. That's Larry Beeson coming out of our motel, and that's where we're at the Nationals. Now this is back this is back in California, up at Winters, California, over at an abandoned B-25 training base. Those were two Orions that were made from plans and crushed wood that was used to pack up boat hulls. This is Jack Albrecht with his Ascender, and this is, I believe, Ernie Emeritus Smoghog, I believe. And this is at the EBRC field down by Diablo and all that sort of stuff down in EBRC, yes, by radio controllers. This is Joe Gross with a Spitfire Eyes qualifier, Highway 680. This is a TTPW from Bob Heiss. This is his Delta Wing Pylon Racer. Two-tone pulse width, good equipment. And Bob used to fly it and fly it and fly it. And he was good with it. Here goes Jack Albrecht with his Ascender. And Jack always used every inch of the field. And he knows that. And Jack coming in for a landing. And that's a Jack landing. Yes. Any landing's a good landing you can walk away from. Anyway, there's Jack's airplane and the NICAD underneath the nose wheel. This is somebody's BB Jodell, I don't know who it is. And you see all those trees back there. That day, Dale Root landed in the trees. This was my pursuit out at Hickam. This is in front of the BOQ at Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. I had taken the wing and lopped off one wing rib per panel. And this airplane flew fine until I lost my Ritchie pack and it crashed tearing up the wing, and I modified it then. But this airplane flew real nice. And this is Colonel Herb Ross's modified pylon racer. That was up at Dillingham Field on the northwest end of the island. This is Lou Lucci holding my Pursuit, standard gear. A lot of paint on that airplane. It was a nice airplane. And this is in front of the BOQ looking across the street at all those houses and barracks and stuff. This was it after the new wing. That wing was from an Ascender courtesy of Jack Albrecht. And I turned it into a tricycle geared airplane. The Ascender, of course, was not a low wing. And it also flew magnificently well here. And it convinced me that tapered wings were the way to go if you wanted to cure most of the ills of an airplane. This airplane flew very nice. Harold DeBolt told me that one time in a contest he ran into a light on the runway, tore off one wingtip, cut the other wingtip off, started flying again, and it flew better. So anyway, it takes it. Here is in the backyard at Hickam Village, Lou Lucci's Stormer, very exotic, with spaceless control in it. And there he is in the shadows in his backyard. His wife used to take Japanese and Hawaiian cooking classes, and I always used to go over there to sample her homework. Oh, they'd call me up and say, "You want something to eat?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'll be right over." And here we are, upside down, out at Barber's Point. Here's somebody with their Super Cub, which is basically a capital kit from which the Schneider Cub evolved from. Here we are at Barber's Point. This is my Hunter. And these are the only motion pictures I have of it. It did a 3-turn spin from a 2-turn altitude. And Jack Albrecht sent me this airplane from Korea. And I flew up a storm. My favorite trick with this thing was start the takeoff roll with full up elevator. And as soon as it broke ground nose high, I'd throw in hard right rudder and do a snap roll. And then sometimes I'd even touch the landing gear on the bounce out. And I had used a 45 Super Tiger, which didn't have near as much power as a K&B, and you had to fly it through everything. It was wonderful to fly, just didn't have enough power. This airplane also, the Junior Astrohawk, came from Jack Albrecht. He sent it to me. I was his poor relative at the time. And this was my quick fly correction, my qualifier 1, that had the wing that I trashed. In it, I had a OS-49 because Kirkland said it was such a great airplane. But I threw that wing away and built the other wing that had the trailing edge ailerons. The wing fell apart from the aerogloss. And I had pre-glued a bunch of stuff. It just still wasn't good. So I went back to using Ambroid, which I didn't like because it filled with air in scallops. And I like Duco the best. I once got a gallon of Duco from Phil Kraft. He had a 100-gallon drum that he was selling it. And I used it for years. It was great stuff. Duco was the best you could get. I enjoyed Duco. This is the first flight of my qualifier one. This was at an airport at Travis Air Force Base. That red airplane, of course, is mine. And this is before I moved the CG back. And this was a Boone ship with F&M reeds. And this is Ernie Meredith. And this was our first test flight day for both aircraft. And those were Ernie's kids sitting on the ground. Ernie was a great guy. He lives in Florida now, and I guess he's still modeling from what I hear. And there I am holding my bird. And I'm not modeling. Anyway, it was a good time. We went out to this light aircraft field, which was located off the base. But it was for a base flying club, and where you could have your own little Cessnas and what have you and fly for fun when you weren't flying for real. And here we are at the place, at the field. This is first test flight. And this is eventually first lift off. This is a 12-channel orbit. A little bit of turn there. 12-channel orbit, and this uses relayless with transmites. And there goes Ernie with his airplane with F&M. And we both had a good time that day, I guess. It was looking kind of dismal and dark. Dismal and dark. And of course, there were no light aircraft wanting to play around, so we had a good time. I had to bring that over on a C-124 from Hickam, where I was stationed. I had been stationed at Travis before, and then I was transferred out to Hickam. Anyway, here's our Boone. Here's Ernie's ship at the end of the day, but all it needed was some glue. This is out at Bakersfield. That was Doc Brook, and I think that was his Whistler. And of course, here is, I think, Joe Gross with a standard qualifier, I believe. Anyway, we're at Bakersfield, and this was an emergency field. Yeah, that's Joe. And it was about a mile by a mile or something like that, just asphalt as far as you could see. A lot of the guys, when they come to the contest, would come in and fly in their own airplanes. Cliff Warwick and Kraft would come in a Cessna 310 or something like that. And no problem at all. Just come in and land and park it somewhere. And there were no fuel pumps, of course. So you better have round-trip fuel when you got there, or something to get you somewhere where you get a drink. Anyway, this was Bakersfield. This was a combination meet sponsored by the Northern California Radio Control Society and the Larks, a combination of clubs in Northern California and the Larks together to have a meet that was kind of halfway in between. This was a glass bat from the designer who's, I can't remember his name, but it was the same airplane that was won by Doc Brook at the Internats, and he gave no credit at all to the designer. And here is a Sultan or a qualifier. I think it's a Sultan. I'm not quite sure. No, it's a qualifier. And I don't know who the pilot is. Now, I was flying at this contest, and that's my airplane coming in, upside down. And Jerry Nelson had the transmitter. That's Jerry Nelson's airplane there, his Sultan. What had happened is my Ritchie pack had failed. And I was dead, and it was flying inverted, free flight at partial throttle. And there's Jerry doing Polaroids, and Joe Gross looking at him, standing still right beside him there. And this is Ray Downs' Sultan. And that's the Whistler of Brooks there. This is Breitling's Mustang. I'm sorry, P-38. Where was my mind? This is Dale Root's Rootang, and this is the one that he had the retractable gear in it. And on the bottom of the wing it said Mom or Wow, depending upon how you looked at it. This was Dale's Rootang, and if you look, and here was a guy from the EBRC. I can't remember his name, but this was a Jerry Nelson design. Here's coming in for a landing. I think it's a qualifier. Now this was a PBY, and it was beautiful. Frank Johnson's, I think. and beautiful, and he was going to let Dick Riggs do the trim out and flying of the thing on first flight. Here is, I think, Doc Brooks flying his Delta Pylon Zephyr or Zipper. And here's Jerry Nelson with his Sultan. He'd broken the tail off and glued it back on. It's crooked. And if you look carefully, you can see it, the low side, the left side's low. But it seemed to fly fine. And that's Jerry Nelson. This is Joe Gross with his qualifier. Joe in landing. Joe was a good pilot. I presume he still is. He flies as a representative of the Hacker Electric Motor Company, flying electric-driven airplanes. Here was something that was kind of looking like a German aircraft, and I will show pictures of it in a moment. Twin-engine airplane. One bounce, two bounce. And here comes something in a bag. Here's the results of the bag. Swastikas bit the dust.